Yeah.
So if you do the math, you find that you lose 99% of the economic value in cash. And that's why nobody in their right mind would put $1 million of cash in a box and put a time lock on it, and in the year 2120 expect their great grandchildren to open the box and for it to be worth anything. It will be worth nothing.
Sure.
If I put $1 million of gold in a box, 100 years from now, the challenge is, will the bank or the government seize the gold? Pretty much every country on earth stole everybody's gold over the last 100 years. If you had it in Germany, it got stolen multiple times. The British, the French, the Japanese, the Russians, even the Americans stole everybody's gold. So, and if it didn't get stolen, that's what we call counterparty risk, seizure, confiscation. If it didn't get stolen, if you increase the gold supply by 2% a year, then you realize the half-life of money in gold, that's the half-life of energy in a battery. The half-life of money in gold is 35 years.
Which, by the way, we increase it by 2% because we're mining new gold every year, right? It isn't a limited fixed amount.
You can't stop the gold miners from mining gold. So ultimately, the economic energy stored in the container of gold is dissipating at 2 to 3% a year, which means you're going to cut it in half. You realize that gold doesn't really hold economic energy great. It just happens to be the best portable, non-sovereign way to move energy around.
And portable is I'm not going to pick up a ton of gold and move it someplace.
Yeah, it's semi-portable. You couldn't move $1 million of gold through an airport, but it's more portable than a building, right? You're not moving your building out of LA ever. Right. So you've got this conundrum, which is things that hold their value for a long time, like soccer teams or football teams, maybe. Well, they have cultural risk. Will people still want to watch football and soccer in 100 years? And they're not so portable and they're very political. Then you have things that look straightforward, like owning 1,000 acres of land. But if your enemy takes over as governor of the state, they just pass a property tax, so they tax your land away from you. And then the oldest cliche is lost the family farm because we couldn't pay the property taxes.
Sure. And by the way, that's an important point, right? Because the value of your land that you own dissipates over time because it's taxed constantly. And it's like, you could, if you had a deed to a piece of land for 100 years, at the end, you don't own the land anymore if you didn't pay your taxes.
Yeah. So if you're a rich family in New York City and you have real estate, the reason that you still own it is because you rented it out and you were very competent in the way you manage the politics, the tax, and the rent, and you manage to get more rent than the tax. And then if you do that well, and if you get lucky, then you'll still have the land. But the families that keep their land for hundreds of years and use it to store wealth, and they never have it taxed away or taken away. You know who they are?
The dictators, the rulers, the kings,
the sovereigns.
Yes.
Okay, if you own the country, like let's say the Windsors. The Windsors, still own the middle of central London, but that's because they kind of own the government, or at least they're politically favored. Or if you go to the Middle East, you go to Dubai, you're a wealthy foreigner. You're like, I think I'll just buy a bunch of beachfront here. No, you're not. They don't sell the good property to foreigners. You have to be a royal in order to own the beach. So many countries, what you find is the sovereigns, they own the land forever in perpetuity and give it to their children's children's children. And the reason they can afford to do it is because there's no tax. Digital gold, then it should replace gold. Gold's worth $10 trillion, and that takes Bitcoin to 500,000. But when you think of it as digital property, like replacing buildings and land and other long storeholds of wealth, then, you're up by a factor of 20 or 30 from there. I mean, it should not be... It's much better than digital gold because I can move Bitcoin at the speed of light and I can program it to 1 million transactions an hour on an iPhone or a website. You can't do that with gold. So it's got more utility than gold, which means it's probably worth 20 or 30 trillion if it just replaces the gold. But instead of buying the Fontainebleau Hotel, which is a nice hotel, worth whatever billions in Miami Beach, instead of buying the equivalent amount of Bitcoin, If you bought the Bitcoin, you can move that to any city in the world every hour of the day, compose it, decompose it, recompose it, dematerialize it. And, when there's a nasty tax on it, you can just move yourself to a different jurisdiction where there's a better tax treatment. 500,000 at 100 trillion is 5 million. So I think, we're marching toward $10 trillion, which is, $10 million a coin, which is why Bitcoin enthusiasts see it's just a very great long-term store of value. And it's a great investment idea because it meets the needs of 8 billion people. The average person, the middle-class person that drives an Uber or works as a dentist, they can't buy $387 worth of a building in New York City every month as their savings plan. Right. And a person in Africa can't buy a small share of a nice piece of property. They can't buy $127 worth of a Picasso painting. So Bitcoin offers property rights at any scale, any amount of money, anybody in the world. And you don't have to worry about, will people like Picassos? Will they still want buildings in Vegas or New York? Will some politician tax it away from me? Well, can I take it through an airport? So if you're looking for an egalitarian, utilitarian way for people to save money and protect the digital monopolies, the Apple, the Google, the YouTube, the Facebook, these things.
The MicroStrategy.
We thought that we were late to them, but the truth is Google would have been a good idea to invest in, all the way up to like a few months ago. It's still getting more powerful. And you think you've fully embraced Google in the year 2018, but Google was going to get more powerful and surge. And if you thought you understood it in 2020, by 2021, it was more powerful. And the same is true with Apple. And Apple and Google, probably more powerful than most nation states. Same with Microsoft. We thought Microsoft, we understood that one, and Microsoft got digital transformation of money, property, and energy. And paradigm shifts are so profound that you're staring at them and you don't realize they took place because your worldview is constructed based upon a bunch of assumptions that you've always taken for granted. And so what Thomas Kuhn says in the structure of scientific revolutions and what we study at MIT is there's only two circumstances under which people willingly undergo a paradigm shift. And one way is you wait for the old guard to die. And yes. The millennials they get it because they're different. And Einstein, said God does not play dice with the universe. Einstein never liked quantum theory. You could be a brilliant person, but you won't embrace the paradigm shift while you're alive in the absence of a crisis. The second way you get paradigm shift is a war. When there's a war and there are bombs dropping from above, you don't believe in atomic power, but then someone drops a nuclear weapon and the city evaporates, and all of a sudden you become a believer and you reassess your